So today we're going to be doing the rubbing in method. So we're going to put our flour into our large mixing bowl, and then we're going to add our hard margarine or butter. And to do the rubbing in method, we're going to be using just our fingertips. So using the fingertips, we're going to coat the butter in flour and break it into smaller pieces. Using just our fingertips, we're going to gently rub the butter and the flour together. We're going to continue to do this until we have a breadcrumb-like consistency. Remember to check your hands. You shouldn't be using the palms of your hands because these are the warmest part of your hands. And by using your fingertips, these are the coolest part. This is going to mean that the butter or the fat that you're using is not going to melt during this process. The rubbing in method is usually done by hand. However, it can be done in the food processor if you have one. When you think you are nearly done, or when you think you are finished, gently shake your bowl and you will notice any large lumps of fat or butter come to the surface of your flour, and you can continue to rub those in. Now we've got no lumps of butter left. Here is our breadcrumb mixture.
With your rubbed in mixture, we're now going to add in some cold water to bring it together. So when you're making pastry, you've got your flour and your hard margarine, which you've made into breadcrumbs, and now you're adding cold water slowly because you don't want to add too much. And you bring it, keep going until you bring it together into a dough. Okay, when you've got to that stage, you're then going to add some flour to your work surface and take the pastry out. And just bring it all together, gently rolling it into the flour. Now make sure you've got enough flour on your work surface and on your rolling pin. And as you gently roll, keep turning your pastry around so it doesn't stick to the work surface. You don't need to flip it over completely, you just need to give it a little gentle twist as you're rolling. Now you need to think about the size of your quiche dish. So as you're rolling your pastry out, you're going to have that in mind. So I'll show you what I mean in a second. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up my quiche dish. Okay, if you don't have one like this, you could use a Pyrex glass dish. And I'm going to place it on top. Now I know that will cover the bottom, but I want to make sure it goes down the sides. So if I turn over my quiche dish the other way, I can clearly see that I've got enough for it to go over the bottom and at the sides. So what I'm going to do is use my rolling pin as my tool to help me lift up my pastry. So I put it about a third of the way down the pastry. I lift my pastry up and roll it over the rolling pin. Now bring your dish as close as you can to your rolling pin, because you don't want to lift up the rolling pin and the pastry fall off. Now very gently roll your pastry over the top of your dish, so it should cover most of it, and then you can very gently with your hand just bring your pastry down into the side of your dish, like so. And if you've got a little gap like I have here, then what you can do is take a little bit of your spare pastry from the side over here, and then you can just gap fill your pastry by pushing it in on the edge, and then using a sharp knife you can just go round the edge. Okay, and you should be able to hear the noise that's going along, and you can trim the spare pastry off your dish. So once your mixture has gone in the microwave, we now need to drain it through a sieve into a bowl. This is to remove any of the juices and the extra fat. The reason why we do this, if you put it on top of your pastry, it's going to make your pastry really soggy, and we don't want to have soggy pastry. We also don't want to have extra fat in it that we don't need to have. So just run your spoon or fork through that just to make sure we've removed any of the juices. Okay, and then you're going to sprinkle that on top of your quiche, on your pastry base, and just spread it around so we try and get an even mixture of onions and bacon across your different sections. Now I pre-grated my cheese here, so I'm just going to sprinkle the cheese around. Now I'm going to put a little bit at the bottom and a little bit on top. You can do it any way you like. Okay, it's really up to you. And then I'm going to pour my egg and milk mixture on top. And just go around in a circle just to make sure I've got enough to cover the whole area. Okay, and then I'm going to take the last little bit of my cheese, sprinkle it on top, and that will go lovely and golden brown when it goes into the oven. Now notice that I've put my quiche onto a baking tray. That's so that when it goes into the oven, if it should overspill at all, it's going to have something to catch the spillages. Also, the metal tray will help to conduct the heat right through to the bottom of the quiche to make sure it's fully cooked.